decision for the joint venture's decision to make. Thank you.
I call the Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Madam Chair, I appreciate the Minister and the Chair's response, but she has not addressed the fundamental question that is critical to the powers that she is seeking from this Parliament around the Building Act. The very simple question I put to the Minister, and I'll put it to her again, is that Parliament, post-Christchurch earthquakes, has put an enormous amount of work into setting a minimum standard for earthquake-prone buildings, and that is that any building has to meet a minimum of 34% of the new build standard. Now, while I'm supportive of this bill before the Parliament, giving the Minister the power to use order in councils, and I'm sure the member is aware of the concerns of the Regulatory Review Committee, is that we're giving you very wide powers. I want a reassurance that you are not going to use those powers to go less than the 34% that Parliament has deemed and the Royal Commission has recommended. Now, it may be that the Minister wants to use these powers to exempt the cathedral spire from having to have a lift, as well as the historic staircase. I'm quite relaxed about that. But I do not think this Parliament should be relaxed about walking away from that 34% minimum standard recommended by the Royal Commission and imposed in the Building Act amendments passed 2 years ago. This bill could give the Minister the power to undermine those standards, and I just simply seek a reassurance, given that the Christchurch Cathedral has faced 6 earthquakes with significant damage. I simply seek a simple reassurance that those Building Act earthquake-prone building amendments will not be bypassed through these order in council powers.
Madam Chair.
Honourable Maggie Barry.
Thank you very much, sitting here behind you there. Thank you for noticing.